Hello, everybody, and welcome to the High Ticket Client Online show. I am so excited for today's talk. It's kind of funny. I think that when we think about lawyering and all the legal things, we don't necessarily think of fun, right? We're like, but for this episode, I am really, really excited for this because I think that there's a lot of questions that we entrepreneurs online have that your average entrepreneur isn't, not that your average lawyer isn't thinking about. And this is something that I've thought about for a while, where there might be, lawyers who work with, traditional businesses, and that's great. And that's lovely. But there is a really rapidly growing number of online entrepreneurs who don't necessarily have lawyers who understand what it means to run the business the way that they run their business, right? Like, as entrepreneurs, as online entrepreneurs, whether you're a coach, consultant, speaker, author, trainer of any sort, which we have a lot of you guys here. Say for us, we were living in Mexico for half a year. Well, what does that mean legally, right? About your business. Our businesses are international. You guys might have clients from all over the world. You might have clients from all over the nation. We went from being able to service, one little city or an area, geographical area, to all of a sudden, as soon as you begin your business, you're national and you're international. And so I'm really excited to discuss the many angles and the many questions that you guys have about your, protecting your business and the right time to do so, etc. So again, welcome back, everybody. I'm going to make sure that you guys can hear us. I see we have 4 people here, but let me just make sure. So my comments are going to be your comments. I'm going to be checking your comments over here on my phone. All right, here we are. And if you guys are here live, I know we have some people here with us. Hey, Charlotte, hashtag live on the comments. And I know that this has been one of the necessary and very desired trainings here, podcast episodes. So if you guys are here, let us know that you're here. Okay, so we talked about the, why it is that this is actually a topic that is, should be top of mind, and also some of the intricacies behind that. I went to law school, don't want to practice. I'm okay. I am so excited that Andrea is here because she loves practicing and she does an incredible job at what she does. So before we jump in and introduce Andrea, let me introduce you to the show. So welcome again to the High Ticket Client Online show, where we guide you on how to take your coaching, your consulting, and your service small business online. We help you become an online magnet for your dream clients, use social media and digital content strategy to easily make more sales. Can we get a cha-ching? And create a raving community of lifelong fans and customers without you feeling lost, overwhelmed, or feeling the angst of not knowing how to take your business online, so you can best share your gifts with the world. So together we can all tackle the world's most pressing challenges. Okay, so our guest today is Andrea. And let me see, I am going to see if I can change this overlay. There we are. There we are. Okay, better. That way we can see your name. All right. So Andrea Sager is, and am I saying your last name right?
Yes, it's Andrea Sager.
Okay, Andrea Sager, not Andrea. Andrea, sorry about that. Is a small business attorney shaking up the legal industry. After working for a large law firm working with large businesses, Andrea realized her true passion was helping small businesses embrace and protect their business and intellectual property. In just under 3 years, Andrea has become the go-to attorney for online entrepreneurs, protecting everything from the brand names to their courses and blog posts. Andrea is also the host of the hit podcast, The Legalpreneur. And we're so excited to have you. And for some reason, I keep saying Andrea.
Totally cool.
Andrea.
It is totally
Okay.
Cool. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Okay. So so excited to have you here. And when we begin, I like to always start with just people getting to know you, because, especially when it comes to lawyering, there can be this like a lawyer, like this scary, person that we only talk about when it's like bad things. So we're going to soften things, and I'm going to ask you, what is your spirit animal and why?
My spirit animal would have to be a goat.
A goat. Why? I love goats.
Greatest of all time, man.
Yeah, yeah.
I never had thought about it, and then I was like, man, what would be my spirit animal? And then I really did some thinking, and I was like, a goat, duh.
Yeah. Did you know that goats are some of the only animals that make friends with other animal species?
I did not know that.
Now
No.
you know.
Mm-mm.
Really interesting. Goats are actually super cool. Awesome. So it's a goat. So, and now let's jump in and let's find out, how did you end up doing the work that you're doing now? So you are an attorney, but you're not an attorney of any kind, right? The thing with attorneys is you have a specialty. So what kind of attorney are you, and why? How did you end up here? What was your life journey that got you to the place where you are now, doing the work that you're doing with the small entrepreneurs, small business owners that you're working with? Like, how did that happen?
So first of all, I like to say I'm a small business attorney, and I
Yeah,
know most people are looking for like, oh, I'm a divorce attorney, I'm a trademark attorney, I
yeah,
am real estate. I am a small business attorney, and I say
love it.
that because I like to say our firm is a full service firm for small businesses,
Great.
because we can do everything for pretty much everything for a small business.
Yeah,
And how I got here was first of all, I am from Houston, and I went to school in Pikeville, Kentucky, of all
yeah,
places. I went on a
yeah.
bowling scholarship, so I have
Wow.
really weird background. I bowled in college. I actually have a national championship.
Oh my
Um,
God.
I have a
Remind
ring.
me not to go bowling with you. I need like the little, like the guard thingies. Okay.
Yeah, so went to college on a bowling scholarship, and then I joined the National Guard to help pay for
Mm,
school. And
mm-hmm,
then I knew I wanted to go to law school.
mm-hmm.
And I went to law school after college, and got I my goal, I wanted to be married to my job. I wanted the big work at the big firm,
Yeah,
make a lot of money.
yeah,
That was my goal.
yeah.
And I had it. I got the big firm job, but when I was in law school, I started a new business because in college I made good money in college. Like I didn't have to live the poor college kid life
Yeah,
because I was in the army. I had another job. Like I was so busy because I went from the one of the largest cities in America to one of
yeah,
the tiniest towns in America.
yeah,
I kept myself busy.
yeah.
I made good money in college. But then when I went to law school, all that was gone.
Hmm.
So then I went to living the poor law school life,
Yeah,
and I was wanting to make more money, but in law school you can't work.
yeah.
They don't let you work in your first year. So I started my own business. I started selling on
Oh,
Poshmark, and then I opened my own clothing boutique. I started
yeah,
online, and then we opened a brick and mortar store, like grew that whole thing.
yeah,
And then I got the big firm job.
yeah,
It was my dream job on the 38th floor. I was
yeah.
in Cincinnati. I could watch a Cincinnati Reds game from my office. Like it was
Wow.
the absolute like dream life, but I was miserable.
Yeah,
Like, I was
I know what
making
that's like.
the most money I had ever made, and I was absolutely miserable. I had my son, my first kid, in law school. So my last semester I had him. So he was 8 months old when I started.
Yeah.
And when I started, I was by far the youngest person that had a
Hmm.
kid. And if I didn't leave
Hmm.
the office at a certain time, I would never see my kid.
Yeah,
I would leave around 5:30, put him to bed, and then work from home the rest of the evening.
yeah,
They weren't cool with that. They wanted button seat for like
yeah.
20 hours a
All
day.
day, every day.
And in my head, I'm like, what the heck? Like
Yeah,
it was 2017, 2018.
yeah,
Like I'm getting the same things done at
yeah,
home than in the office. And anyways, I from having the boutique, I sold it once I started working there. And by having that, I had a whole network of small businesses, boutique
mm-hmm,
owners. They
mm-hmm,
constantly came to me
mm,
for help. Most of
Mm-hmm.
the time, they couldn't afford the rates. But then I
Mm-hmm.
had a couple of clients that were like, you know what? I don't care. I just want your help. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So here I am, a first year attorney, thinking, oh my gosh, they're going to love me. I'm a rock star already bringing in clients.
Yeah.
No, they straight up told me small businesses are not quality clients to me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I literally was heartbroken. I was like, what are you talking about? Like,
Yeah.
these are businesses that need help. And I mean, I had people come to me every week. So I knew, I was like, there's nobody serving this
Yeah.
market. So that was really my defining moment when that partner had told me that. And so
Mm-hmm.
from that moment on, I was like, okay, I got to figure something out because
Mm-hmm.
clearly there's a need there.
Yeah.
And I was planning my exit. My ex and I at the time, we were planning on moving. We were in Cincinnati. We were planning on moving to Houston.
Yeah.
House was for sale. And I had texted him, my husband at the time. I was like, I'm so miserable.
Yeah.
I just want to quit today. And he's like, just wait till we have a contract on the house, and then you
Yeah.
can quit. I'm like, okay, no big deal. That was a Wednesday. Friday, they come in and fire me
Oh, wow.
and offer me a severance package. So literally like days away from quitting, and instead I get fired and offered a severance package.
Yeah.
And so that was, and literally from that moment, like, so that happened on a Friday. Sunday, we got a cash offer on our house. And
Uh-huh.
like everything literally just fell into place. And I was like, okay,
Mm.
like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I launched
Mm.
my firm that weekend, immediately had clients, and it's just been, I mean, I'm not going to say it's been all rosy ever since, definitely highs and lows, but that moment I knew, like, okay, this is what I meant to do.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm so glad that you're doing the work that you're doing, because like you're right. There that like your average lawyer just does not tailor to the needs of a smaller business owner. And then specifically, there's small business owners, and then there's also like these online entrepreneurs, which for the most part, I haven't heard any attorneys really speaking to it. And I'm so glad that you have your podcast. So tell us a little bit more about how the podcast came about.
So funny story. When I launched my firm, I served primarily boutique owners.
Yeah.
And as attorneys, we have to do conflicts checks. And within just a couple of months of launching my firm, I was already having conflicts. So I was like, okay, I have to branch out. I have to branch
Mm,
out. And with the boutique, I had a previous podcast, didn't last very long, but so I was familiar with podcasting.
yeah.
And I knew, I was like, okay, I have to be very intentional about branching out. And so
Mm-hmm.
I remember just looking for a conference to go to, and I saw podcast movement, and I was like, oh, this is perfect. Like, I'll go sponsor the conference, like I'll be there in front of people, and that'll be how I'm just going to expand to another industry.
Yeah.
Worked like a charm. I'm not going to say like I made like so much money, but it helped me get my name out there.
Yeah.
And so after that podcast conference, like that was my thing. I was like, oh my gosh, like conferences, because even so, I mean, obviously, I know there are attorneys out there that are doing something similar to me, but nobody's going to conferences and sponsoring and putting themselves out there the way that I was. So I knew, I was like, okay, this is my little honey hole here, like attending these conferences.
Yeah.
And a lot of podcasters, they don't know that their podcast name needs to be protected. Their
Yeah.
podcast content is protected with the copyright. So I knew there was a need for a lot of education in the podcast
Yeah.
space. So I've really carved out a niche there as well. And then after attending that conference, I've just expanded, and now I serve everybody under the sun who has an online business, a small business. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So let's jump into some of the questions. Okay. So as a small business owner, you might be wondering, and you guys let us know what questions do you guys have, because the whole point of this is to answer your questions as well, right? We have an expert here. That's one of the things that we do here in this group, is that we bring you incredible experts and you guys get to ask questions. So I have some questions from, just the number of questions we've gotten from, the many, like close to 1,000 of you that are in here. And then if you guys have additional questions, just put them in the comments. Okay. So let's begin at the beginning. And so often entrepreneurs will think that the beginning is incorporation. So incorporation, when is the right time to incorporate? And what are the considerations? What are the things that small business owners, specifically online, like they're going to be coaches, consultants, they have courses, they have, like they have all this content they're creating. What is the incorporation consideration that like would be, and we know how legaling lawyering works. You can't, like, she's not going to be able to give you advice for your specific situation, so this is going to be like general. But in terms of thinking generally for someone who's getting started, incorporation, when is the right moment, and what are the incorporation like types that they should be thinking about?
Yeah. So if you don't file any specific documents with your state, then you're most likely a sole proprietor.
Yeah.
And this is pretty much what everybody starts as. If you start selling something, you're a sole proprietor.
Yeah.
Now, I always suggest being an LLC, which is a limited liability company, as soon as possible. And I'll explain it in a minute. So the main entities are sole proprietor, LLC. You can have a partnership, but an LLC can also be a partnership. And then your corporation.
Mm-hmm.
For small businesses and online businesses, I normally don't ever suggest being a corporation.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not worth it. There's a lot more maintenance involved, a lot more fees, and you get the LLC provides pretty much everything a small business needs.
Mm-hmm.
I always suggest filing as an LLC as soon as possible, even before you start selling. If you are starting a business, you're planning to launch, you're creating buzz on social media, you're building an email list, whatever you're doing to preparing to launch your business, that's when you need to file the LLC. And of course, if you've already launched and you're selling, you need to be an LLC. And the reason for this is because when you're an LLC, you as an individual are separate from your business. And I know that's kind of hard for individual business owners to kind of grasp. It's like, well, I'm me, like I am the business, we're one and the same. That's how it is as a sole proprietor. And you do not want that, because if you do something even on accident, because you don't know all the laws out there, and
Mm-hmm.
so many entrepreneurs, and I'll tell you how people get sued, how entrepreneurs get sued, but you do something that causes the business to get sued. And if you're a sole proprietor, you and your business are one and the same. So if your business gets sued, you personally get sued. So they can come after your house, your car, anything you own personally, they can come after when you are a sole proprietor. However, when you're an LLC, then you're separate. So here's you as an individual and here's your business. If you do something in your business that causes it to get sued, well, they can only recover what the business has. They can't come after you personally. It stops here at the business.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I always suggest being an LLC as soon as possible. Because let's say you decide, oh, I'm going to launch this business. You start your Instagram handle, and you don't start your LLC. So day one, you launch the business. Day two, you do something that causes the business to get sued. And then day three, you file the LLC. Well, guess what? The act happened on day two, so you don't get that LLC protection. Even if they sue you a year later when you're making good money, and you're definitely an LLC at that point, you don't get that LLC protection. So you never know what's going to happen, and it's so worth it to get that protection on the books, because number one, you never know what's going to happen. Number two, it can save you a lot of money. And the thing, a lot of people are like, well, so we've been blowing up on TikTok, and
Oh
especially
yeah.
specific topic. And
Yeah.
people are like, well, what are small businesses getting sued for? And really, the big three are trademark infringement, copyright infringement, and breach of contract. Then I would say the number one is copyright infringement. And that is as a result of using photos that don't belong to you, or you don't have a proper license to use. And we've all done it. I've done it. I think pretty much everybody has done this, where you
You
go to
just
Google,
find a Google. Yeah.
find the photo, and you're like, oh my God, this is perfect for my website or to post on Instagram or Facebook. So you do it not knowing that is copyright infringement, and you can get sued for it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Awesome. So I'm going to back up a little bit. So just in case somebody out there, you were like, wait, I'm a proprietorship. So if you don't take action, you are a business entity of some sort. It
Mhm.
happens automatically. You don't have to do anything. It becomes, you are a sole proprietorship.
Mhm.
So this means you, especially if you're working on your own, you're owning this business. But the thing is, because this thing happens automatically, you didn't have to like submit any papers, you didn't have to do anything. It, like, you and your business are one and the same.
Mhm.
So the thing is that for you and your business to be separated, there is extra action that does have to be taken.
Correct.
And so there, that extra action will be, you submitting the incorporation papers, and going through the incorporation process for something like an LLC. So just for you guys to know, even if you don't take action, like, you are a business entity, it just might not be the entity that you want to be. And then we have a question here. So do you have to register your LLC in your state of residence, or business? And she says it's really expensive in California.
So it's actually not expensive to file in California, but the franchise tax that has to be paid every year, that's what gets everybody. Because the filing fee is actually pretty low in California. It's $70 and then $20 for a statement of information. So I just tell people it's a $90 filing fee. But then after 4 months, basically 4 months after you file, then you have to pay your franchise fee,
Mm-hmm.
franchise tax, which is $800 per
Mm-hmm.
year, and then that's due every April. However, I haven't looked into this. I literally haven't had time, but I heard that California passed something. So for new businesses, if you file in 2021, I think, don't hold me to this because I have to look it up. But I think if you file your business in 2021, your franchise tax isn't going to be due until 2022. I think they've done that because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Again, don't quote me on that. I've heard it. I have not verified it though.
Awesome. So you guys heard it here, but verified on your own, because we're not sure.
But
Um,
and a lot of people will ask, well, can I file in a different state and avoid those franchise fees? No. If you live in California and you're doing business in California, you have to pay the franchise fee. So you can file in Nevada or Delaware, which is another popular
yeah.
state, and you still have to file as a foreign entity in California and still pay that franchise fee, that
Hmm.
franchise tax. So I always, and a lot of business owners are like, oh, well, should I file in Delaware?
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions. So should
For
people,
small
small business
businesses,
owners?
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
for small businesses and online business owners, it's typically not worth it because in Delaware, their court system is favorable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Most people aren't going to get sued. They're just going to pay a settlement before they get sued because that's going to save them tens and tens of thousands of dollars, possibly hundreds of thousands of dollars, to just avoid getting sued. So the court system in Delaware is favorable, especially for businesses because they have like a
Mm-hmm.
business court. Um, but it's just not worth it for a lot of small businesses. So I always tell people, as a general note, file in the state that you're in. However, for people that move a lot, so for
Yeah.
nomads or military families,
Mm-hmm.
because you have to file as a foreign entity wherever you're moving to, it may be a good idea to file as Delaware and have that be the home base. And then wherever you're living, you file as the
Mm-hmm.
foreign entity. But again, it varies for everybody.
Okay, so that was for your digital nomads. I know that I've been a digital nomad and I've had that question. What about, so say, yes, you're living in, like, we're living in Texas. You're living in whatever state you're living in, but your business, right? Like, your business activity is like everywhere. You have people from every, like almost every state. You have like people in around the nation, and you have people internationally. And at some point, let's talk about Europe, because I know Europe brings with it some like extra like things that y'all need to know about. So let's just start nationally. So suppose you don't have international business, but you do have business in multiple states. What considerations should you have knowing that you're doing business, online business, right, with multiple states?
So if you're a service provider or a digital content creator, there's really not that many considerations as long as you are in your like the one state. So let's say you file your LLC in Texas, you live in Texas, you carry out your services in Texas, even if your clients are in other states, you only have to worry about filing in Texas. However, if you are now, what considerations may come up are privacy laws. So privacy laws are each state is starting to enact their own privacy laws, and you may be bound by those. California has I can't even think of the new California privacy law that went into effect in 2020. Even if you're not in California,
Mm-hmm.
even if you don't live in California, you could still be bound by that law. So privacy laws are a consideration. But besides privacy laws, there really aren't that many considerations for service providers.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are e-commerce or if you ship
Mm-hmm.
goods,
Mm-hmm.
then you may need to be worried about sales tax. So
Mm-hmm.
there was a case, the Wayfair case a few years back that went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And what was great for online boutiques and online like e-commerce
Mm-hmm.
businesses, you only had to pay sales tax in the state where you lived.
Mm-hmm.
So when I had my store, I was in Kentucky. So
Yeah.
if you didn't live in Kentucky, you didn't have to pay sales tax. So that was great for a lot of online boutiques.
Mm-hmm.
Now
Mm-hmm.
the Supreme Court changed it. I want to say 2017, 2018, and they say, okay, you have to have like this nexus there, like
Yeah.
more than just because it used to be if you had a physical presence, you had to pay sales tax. Now it's more than a physical presence,
Mm-hmm.
and it's different for every state, but typically if you're selling about $250,000, some states say $100,000, some states say like if you sell to this many people or have this
Mm-hmm.
many orders in this state, then you do have to pay sales tax.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are an e-commerce business, that is a real consideration is sales tax. You may have to pay in every single state.
Mm-hmm.
That's a
Mm-hmm.
really big consideration. Definitely, I will not help you with that. Question for your accountant, but I can tell you to be aware of it.
Awesome.
Um,
And
that
so,
I got out of the boutique business right before that happened, which was nice because I didn't have to
yeah.
worry about sales tax.
So, question about products, right? So, we have a lot of, coaches, course creators. So, a product, are we thinking of the definition of a product being something that is physical, that can be touched, or say you have like an ebook, you have these like online products, they are products, and you're selling them in different states, like is that still considered part of services, or is that going to be also considered, you sold a digital good, a digital product in a different states? How should they think about that?
It varies by state.
Mm.
It's seriously, it's different for every single state. At the time when I was
Mm.
living in Kentucky, digital products didn't have to pay sales tax, but Texas, like for photographers, if you're delivering photos, sales tax.
Hmm. Hmm. All right, so then the answer, guys, is like by state.
Mhm.
So if you are delivering digital products, it might be important for you to know what states you're selling into. Now that we've talked about states, can we talk about Europe? I know Europe has.
I honestly don't know a lot. You can ask me.
Oh,
I
really?
don't know if I don't know the answer though. So I don't
So
know.
I know that just when it comes to being online entrepreneurs, which basically everyone here is, to some extent, you're an online entrepreneur. If you are conducting business with Europe, there are some really, really, really strict privacy and like data storage
Are you talking
laws.
about GDPR?
Yeah,
So the thing about GDPR is there were a couple of things that were different than what's here in the US, but a lot of it actually already applied in the US. Most
yeah.
entrepreneurs just didn't know. So of course the cookie thing, so like of course, you see the pop up on almost every website now.
Yeah.
Like you have to accept that they have cookies tracking and all that good stuff. But a big one that I saw, people were like, "Oh my gosh, I can't send emails to people."
There was something about emails. I was
Yeah,
like, there's something having to do with your email list.
yeah. I remember it was going crazy in Facebook groups, like, "Oh, with GDPR, you can't send like marketing emails to people unless they explicitly give you permission." That's always been a thing in the US. So there were certain GDPR things that were different. And I don't even know all the specifics. I don't even remember, but a lot of them already applied here in the US.
Okay. All right. My understanding was that because we have these, business mentors, and they do a lot of work in Europe, and I know that there's some like specific European contingencies to be aware of. So I wasn't sure if you knew what those were,
Yeah,
but just
because we're so US heavy. I honestly don't even pay attention to Europe laws. Like I know about GDPR because that was such a big thing, but
yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
Definitely
so
not
that might be something for you guys to look into on your own if you are conducting business with Europe or internationally. Any other international considerations? If your people are in Australia, or if they're like in Asia, like any other things that people that on your radar?
Yeah, so trademarks go according to country.
Mm,
Trademarks and copyrights are issued according to every country. So if you have clients in multiple countries, you may want to consider filing for those filing those applications in the countries where you're doing business. Now, let's say you have, 90% of your business in the US,
yeah,
10% in Spain. Maybe not worth it to file
yeah,
a trademark in Spain. However, if 58% of your business
yeah.
is in the US and Australia and it's a big percentage, then you may want to consider
Mm,
that. Or if you're, multi-million dollar company, billion-dollar company, I mean, 10% in Spain is a lot of money. So you may want to consider it then. So, I mean,
mhm,
it always varies according to every company, but that's a consideration.
mhm.
I get international clients. They're like, "Oh, well, I do business in the US mainly." And it's like, and they ask me about filing a trademark in their country. I'm like, if you're not even doing business in your country, don't
Yeah,
worry about that. You need to file here in the US. So it's
yeah.
where you're doing business.
Mm,
That's where you need to protect your intellectual property.
mhm. So where is the majority of your business? Um, and let's see. I think I had one more. In terms of incorporation, before we do go on to copyrights and trademarks. Uh, oh yeah. So last thing. So I know that when it comes to incorporation, something that we tell our clients, we're not lawyers, we're business consultants. But there are people will have questions, so we'll tell them an LLC with an S corp, like S corp treatment. So can you speak to what that means, and why people should have an understanding of like being
Yeah.
taxed, like as an S corp?
Yeah, so I get the question, should I be an LLC or an S corp? It's actually the wrong question because you can't be an S corp unless you are first an LLC or a C corp, so a true corporation. And an S corp provides tax benefits. It's a tax election.
Yes.
So, as a sole proprietor and as a single member LLC, you're filing a Schedule C on your taxes. So tax time's coming up. If you're a sole proprietor, you're filing a Schedule C. If you're a single member LLC, so you're the sole owner of your LLC and you have not made the S corp election, then you're filing a Schedule C as well. So a lot of people ask about the tax treatment as an LLC, and I'm like, well, it's the same unless you make the S corp election.
Mm-hmm.
And the S corp help save on self-employment taxes. So as business owners, we're actually double taxed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because the business pays the employment taxes, and then you as the owner, as the employee, you are paying self-employment taxes as well. Well, once you're making enough money, and this is definitely a conversation for your accountant, once you're making enough money, what's enough? That's the conversation you need to have. Then you can make the S Corp election, and that means you only have to pay yourself a reasonable salary. And
Mhm.
then anything else on top, that's distributed to you as profit, and you don't have to pay self employment taxes on that profit. Saves entrepreneurs thousands and thousands of
Mhm.
dollars. So, my
Mhm.
first year of business, we brought in right around 400,000, and that
Mhm.
was my first full year of business. I had no idea how much I was going to make. As a
Mhm.
lawyer, I paid myself a salary of $60,000, and
Mhm.
it's and some people will say, "Well, that's not reasonable." Yeah, it is, because I had no idea how much I was going to make. And
Yeah.
like, and then I started hiring, and there's a million considerations that go into what's reasonable.
Yeah.
Like, what state, like how many years have you been in business? So like,
Mhm.
this year we're planning to make 2 million. It's not reasonable to pay myself $60,000 this year.
Yeah.
So it's going to change every year, and it may even need to be adjusted every quarter. But as long as
Mhm.
it's a reasonable salary and you can prove that to the IRS if you're ever audited, then anything
Mhm.
on top you just distribute as profit, and you don't pay those self-employment taxes. So it's not an S corp is not an entity, it's a tax
Yeah.
election. So
Yeah.
you would be an LLC taxed as an S corp, or a corporation with S corp, with an S corp election.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about asking, should I be an LLC or an S corp? Wrong question. So
Yeah.
I always suggest being an LLC, and then after you have that
Yeah.
conversation with your CPA or your accountant, then you can figure out, okay, when should I make the S corp election?
Awesome. And for those people that are wondering, should I incorporate myself? Should I work with a professional? Should I use something like Legal Shield? Should like just let's go through the pros, cons of like doing it by yourself, having a little bit of help, and then say like we're working with you, it's like having a lot more help.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things that you would just share based on your experiences in terms of like, is there anyone that should try to just do this on their own, pros and cons? And then what are the pros and cons and then having some additional support?
Yeah, so I always tell people, look, it is filing the LLC is definitely figure outable. Totally from Marie Forleo, like everything's figure outable.
Yeah.
And I tell people, if you want to DIY, do it yourself, absolutely. Most states actually have very good resources on how to
Hmm.
do the LLC process themselves. So
Mm-hmm.
if you are one of those DIYers, absolutely DIY. But
Mm-hmm.
DIY does not mean go to LegalZoom or Inkfile or any of those, because the fee that you're paying them is just to use their specific form. They're not a law firm, and they all have upgrades to upgrade to an attorney. But by the time you upgrade and pay all their extra fees, you would actually pay them more than you would pay me to file your LLC. So they get
Mm-hmm.
you in the door, it's like, oh, super cheap LLC filing, like we can do this for you. But by the time you actually upgrade to an attorney, it's more than working with me or another small business attorney. So
Mm-hmm.
I always suggest, if you want to DIY, it's totally figure outable. Just go to your state you can just Google like Texas Secretary of State
Mm-hmm.
LLC filing, or whatever state you're in, and then you can DIY that way, or just go straight to a small business attorney.
Awesome. If you guys have any questions, again, let us know. If you guys have questions about incorporation, about doing it yourself, about where to incorporate, whatever questions you have. Okay, we're going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to switch gears into copyrights and trademarks. So, what are the things that small business owners should know about content? You're all creating content all the time, right? You're creating content on social media, you're creating programs, you're creating your own intellectual property. So what should a small business owner that's creating a lot of this content know about protecting that content?
Yeah, so this is my favorite. I love intellectual property. This is our bread and butter. So as you're creating the content, everything, especially as an online business owner, everything you're creating is intellectual property.
Mm-hmm.
And whether you know it or not, intellectual property is your business's most valuable asset. So you have to do what you can to protect everything you're creating. So, as a quick note, copyrights are your content. So,
Mm-hmm.
your photos, your videos, your blog posts, this recording here, all of the content that you're consistently producing, that is protected with the copyright.
Mm-hmm.
Trademarks are your branding. So your
Mm-hmm.
brand name, your logo, your slogan, your podcast name, your course name, your product name, your service name, anything that has a unique name within your business probably can be protected with a trademark. So
Mm-hmm.
just remember, copyrights equal content, trademarks equal branding.
Love that. Love
Yeah,
that.
I learned how to really break it down, and people are like, "Oh my gosh, I never thought of it like that." It gets super confusing, and
Mm-hmm.
until I became an attorney in this area, I didn't know the difference.
Yeah.
And because entrepreneurs all the time, it's like, oh, copyrights and trademarks, and they misuse the terms
Yeah.
all the time. But
Mm-hmm.
it's really important to know the difference, because if you're a DIYer, you don't want to file an application. You don't want to file
Mm-hmm.
the wrong application, because if you're a DIYer,
Mm-hmm.
I get it. Like, you're balling on a budget and you don't want to file the wrong application and pay the fee that gets wasted. So it's really important to know the difference. Um,
So,
Go ahead.
question. So there is the like registering, right? So if and this is why for you guys it can be really, really important for you not to sound like everybody else out there. Because if you are the first to create it, right? So suppose like somebody else out there started calling themselves after the same name of your business, right? So you're like, I don't know, coaching hero, that's your program name. And but unbeknownst to you, now somebody else started also using like the coaching hero or something. The first person to have like used that, and to like it goes back in time to some extent. You have some like soft protections, you have some protections by being the first one. But so let's talk about like the difference between being the first one to create something versus actually having a set like trademark protection versus and or like copyright protection versus saying like, well, it, you know, I'm sort of protected de facto.
Yeah. So the thing about copyrights is you have protection the moment the work is created.
Correct.
You don't have more protection by having a registration. But if you have a copyright registration before somebody infringes, or within 3 months of publishing your work, then you're eligible for statutory damages. Statutory damages, long story short, very big bargaining chip when there's infringers involved. This is really important for photographers. We work with a lot of t-shirt designers. So designers and photographers, that's who I've seen benefit most from getting those registrations as soon as possible. Statutory damages, basically it's easier to prove damages. The other party has to pay your attorney fees. So it's a big bargaining chip, because people will say, well, I don't want to sue anybody. When you're eligible for statutory damages, normally you don't have to sue them, because they know, oh, I don't want to get sued because I have to pay even more. So I just say it's a very, very big bargaining chip where they'll pay you a settlement without having to actually sue. So copyrights, you have rights the moment the work is created.
Correct.
But having the registration does help.
Okay.
Trademarks, on the other hand, you have common law rights the moment you start using it. You may have common law rights the moment you start using the name, but a registration gives you a federal registration gives you federal rights, so national rights. That's huge, especially in the online world. So I always tell people, depending on, unless you're a photographer or designer, your trademarks will be more important to you than
Then
your
your copyrights.
registrations. So with trademarks, it's not just your brand name. That's a big misconception. People will get their brand name protected and they're like, oh great, I'm done with trademarks. No, you want to build on them, because as a business owner, hopefully you have an exit in mind, you have an end game, and that's hopefully to sell. And the more trademark registrations you have, the more valuable your brand is. So I tell people the goal is to build a wall of trademarks. So every trademark is laying down more bricks, and you want to build a wall so high that nobody can get over that wall and infringe on your brand. So trademarks, it's a never ending game, and the more you have, the more valuable your brand is.
Hmm.
With trademarks, it's not just the same exact name that's infringement, it's anything similar enough that
Mm.
can cause brand confusion. So
Mm.
my brand name is Andrea Sager Law. If there's
Mm-hmm.
an Andrea Sager Legal out there, that's infringement. If
Mm.
there's the Andrew Sager Law Firm or some variation of that, that's infringement.
Hmm.
The Andrea Seeger firm, that's infringement. But if there's Andrea Sager for handbags, that's not infringement, even if it's
Yeah.
the exact name, because it's a completely different industry.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a matter of name similarities and the similarity of the goods and services.
Mm-hmm. All right. So here they're protecting. So suppose you have an online course, or you have your own with our clients. We talk to you guys about creating your intellectual property, creating your frameworks, your systems, your methods, um, and so it's protecting that. So if somebody starts creating a framework, that looks just like yours, then having some protection for that.
Absolutely. Yep.
Awesome. Next question. If you guys have questions, please put them in the comments. So next question here is, what contracts do you need for your business?
So, if you have a website, which I'm assuming all of you do, then you absolutely want to have your privacy policy and your terms and conditions on your website. The
Mm-hmm.
privacy policy is actually required by law. The terms and conditions are not required by law, but still a really good idea to have them. And that's the contract between you and the visitor of your website.
Mm-hmm.
If you can purchase something on your website, then the terms and conditions can also be the contract between you and the purchaser of the product. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so those two contracts, absolutely, you want to have them on your website. And then if you're a service provider, then you want to have a service contract. If you hire independent contractors, you always want to have a contract with them. If you
Mm-hmm.
work with influencers, anytime there's a business relationship and there's money changing hands, you always want to use a contract. And don't be afraid to use them. I hear so many times, like, oh, I don't want them to think I'm trying to pull one over on them. No,
No, you're protecting them and you,
yes. A contract is there to protect both
both
parties.
sides.
It's laying out the rights and duties of both parties. Anytime, like I'm not gonna say anytime, but most like 9 times out of 10, if there's an issue with, a client comes to me and there's an issue about this arrangement, it's because there's nothing in writing. There's no written contract. So, and it protects you because somebody says if they pay you $10,000 for this coaching program and they're like, oh, I didn't get this or this, I want a refund. It's like, okay, well, let's look at the contract. We said you're going to get this, this, and this. You got this, this, and this. So you're not entitled to a refund. So
Mm-hmm.
contracts are there to protect your butt.
Mm-hmm.
And don't
Yes.
tell people. Like sometimes I forget what I tell people I'm delivering.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I go back and look at the like for us, we send
Yeah.
engagement agreements, which is the contract with our clients. And I look at that. I'm like, okay, well, we said we're doing this, so we're
Yeah.
doing this, this, and this. So it's there to protect both
Both of
parties.
you.
Like if I can encourage you to do one thing, that is to get out of your head that contracts are you're trying to screw somebody over in a contract. Like that's not the case. It's there to protect both parties.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And another question I get a lot is when should I use a written, like send somebody to sign a contract versus just having them agree to the terms and conditions on the website?
Mm.
It's completely up to you. So pretty much in every state, as long like if they're purchasing on the website and the contract or the terms are there in front of them and they have to say, hey, I agree to these
Mm-hmm.
terms and conditions. And if the terms aren't there in front of them and they have to check the box that says, I agree to the terms and conditions, the terms and conditions has to be clickable for them to go read it, and they have to actively check the box. So the box can't already be checked.
Mm-hmm.
So they
Mm-hmm.
have to actively check the box. They have to be able to click to go read the terms. If those two things are there, it's binding. However, I mean, if you have a $10,000 program, you may want to send them a separate contract where you have their actual signature.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And I will say, speaking from experience, double check your contracts. I know with DocuSign and HelloSign, it's a lot easier to make sure everything is done. But
Yeah.
we had a situation with a client where her client hand signed it, sent it back, but there were two places for a signature, and her client only signed in one place.
Mm.
So double check that everything is correctly signed.
Yeah. And I was going to say there are tools that make you create it and sending your contracts to your clients, making that much, much easier. And
Mhm.
we do want you guys to get into the practice of having contracts. It is, again, it's protecting your business, it's protecting them. It's just good like housekeeping, right, for your
Yes.
business. Just like have contracts, especially here in in this group and in the people that we work with you guys. We coach you on high ticket programs, creating high ticket programs. So if you're selling something above $1,000, I want you to be protected. I want you to be a smart business owner. We want you guys to be smart, profitable business owners. And one of those good housekeeping items is to have a contract. And the other thing I don't want you guys to get scared by, it's like, this super fancy contract doesn't have to be super fancy. There are some basic things that will be part of a, like, even like a template contract that are just, basic things that will be there to protect, again, you and the client. So good housekeeping, have contracts as you bring on clients. We have somebody say, how do you know which names exist already when you choose your own company name?
So you don't always know everything. That's a really bold statement. So the only way to truly know if you have the rights to a name is to do a trademark search with a trademark attorney, because they can tell you, yes, you're good to go, or no, this is trademark infringement. But what I tell clients is absolutely do your own searching. Look, search domain names, social media, Google, find the low hanging fruit, because you don't want to pay me to find something that you could have found on your own.
Yeah.
And you can check the trademark office. But the reason your search isn't enough is because you don't know how to find what's similar. You know how to
Mm,
find the same exact name, maybe a little variation here or there, but we know how to find the similarities. And what you don't want to happen, which we've seen too many times, is you do your digging, you do your own searching, and you're like, oh, there's nothing else out there. And so you launch your business. And then a couple of months later, here comes this cease and desist letter that says, hey, you're infringing on our name.
mm,
And you're like, well, what the heck? Like, I searched everything. Like, I didn't see this out there. And that's because you don't know how to find anything similar. So, one of the biggest examples I have for this is we had a client, she launched um, Soul Honey Boutique,
mm,
HUNNY, and there was a Soul Honey, HONEY.
hmm.
She didn't find the other one, and the other Soul Honey sent her a cease and desist letter literally within like a month or two of her launching. So you just think about that. You spend all that time branding yourself, creating buzz, and getting your audience accustomed to who you are, and then almost immediately you have to rebrand. I mean, the bright side is she wasn't like this big $1 million company.
Yeah.
Everybody knew who she was. She had to rebrand. So, I mean, there's always a bright side, but you still want to avoid that at all costs, because that, for a lot of people, like, that's such a setback early on.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just not cut out for this entrepreneur life, and that's not true.
It's not true.
You have to
Yeah.
be educated to know how to avoid these legal mishaps.
Which is exactly why we have somebody like Andrea here. Um, some people might be wondering, back to the contracts, are the free downloadable contracts from Google good enough?
So I don't know. I tell people, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I would have to look at all them, but because I don't know. I know no matter what, if I tell people never use a free Google download, they're still going to do it, because, like I said, you're balling on a budget, like trying to make things work. And we create a free download to help you identify if your free contract or that borrowed contract from a friend is good enough. So we have contractmusthaves.com. It's a free download where
Awesome.
has the 4, or there's actually 5. We have a bonus in there, but it's the 5 must-haves in a contract to make
Love
sure that
that.
it's protected. So, because I know like you're gonna go find a free contract, and which is fine. Like I think using a template contract as a new business owner is smart, because what
Yeah.
happened was all these new business owners were coming to me and saying, "Hey, I need this. I'm starting a business. Like, I need this contract." And so we would take them through our process to start, like, to create this custom contract for them. And because they were a new business owner, they didn't know what they needed. So they were
Mm-hmm.
using my template anyway. So
Mm-hmm.
we have our own templates,
Mm-hmm.
but we also created this freebie. That way you can find
Great.
whatever contract you're using, you can make sure that you have these must haves in your contract to make sure all the parties are
And
protected.
what was that again?
Contractmusthaves.com.
Contractmusthaves.com, guys. We have a couple of questions. So this trademark protection is worldwide. So you spoke to that a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's by country.
Mm-hmm.
So I always suggest filing in the main country that you sell in
Mm-hmm.
first, and then you can, depending on how much revenue is in other countries, the revenue split, it just depends. But you always want to start with where you're making the most money.
Mm-hmm. And so Melissa says that's a good question. I found a program with a similar name to her business here in the US and Canada. So if you find something that has a similar name in a different country, what are some of the things that you should be thinking about?
So, number one, you want to think about, okay, could they expand here? Because if they expand to the US, they could stop her from using the name. So it's whoever's using it first throughout the world. But I
It's
mean,
whoever's using it first throughout the world, not whoever's using it first in the country.
yes,
Ah, interesting.
yes. So if somebody's in a different country and they later decide to expand to the US, they could, I mean, they could still send you a cease and desist letter years later after you've already built this huge business.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. All right, guys, we're about at the hour. So if you guys have additional questions, this is a good time to share your questions. All right. So, what is the legacy as we're wrapping things up? Again, if you guys have questions, share your questions now. This is the perfect time. As we're wrapping things up, what is the legacy that you are working to leave behind in the world? Where do you see yourself being in the next 3 to 5 years?
So my goal is to educate as many entrepreneurs as possible. Like we educate, like we will teach you the law for free, and then we make our money by doing the services for you. But my goal is to educate as many entrepreneurs as possible, because the moment you become a business owner, you're held to the same standard
Mm-hmm.
as any other billion or trillion dollar company. Because you're a business owner, you're held to that same standard whether you know the law or not. So as a small business owner, you need the education, and that's why I mean I have my podcast, we
Yeah.
TikTok, Instagram, I put out tons of free education because I want entrepreneurs to be educated enough to protect themselves and not experience those legal mishaps, which can, quite frankly, like steer you away from wanting to be an entrepreneur. But it's not that hard. Like it's only scary when you wait until there's an issue to take care of the legal stuff. But if you're
Mm-hmm.
proactive and you take care of the legal stuff up front, normally you don't have issues.
And so, what we heard, some of those top things that you guys might want to be proactive about are going to be your incorporation, thinking about your taxation treatment because that's going to save you lots of money. Thinking about your copyrights, which is going to be probably less important for some of the people that we have here. Your trademark will be more important, and just making sure that your contracts, that you have a contract in place, and that it is covering the bases, which Andrea has so generously shared that tool with us. So that is. Oh, let's see. One more question came in right on time. As a coach, you might not have the knowledge of dealing with trauma, serious depression, PTSD. How do you protect yourself if this comes up? Do you stop the coaching and refer to a psychologist or a medical doctor?
So, I mean, I would say it just depends like how deep that trauma is. Like if they're clearly like physically having issues right then and there, I would stop and refer them somewhere. But if you can just tell, like, there are some things that they need to deal with, then, after the session, I would refer them to a professional to help with that.
Yeah. So I think you're concerned about the like, do you have the proper credentials to help someone having that issue?
Mm-hmm.
And so hopefully, like, hopefully you've made it very clear who you can help and you actually can help them. And then definitely when it comes to more like mental health things, there are some more like strict legal protections when it comes to mental health and therapy, et cetera, and how you're able to go about in having that sort of business. So I think very important that you're not identifying yourself to be a therapist if you're not a therapist, right?
Exactly.
Like, don't make yourself out to be something that you're not. But as long as you're very, very clear that you are what you say you are, and you're not saying that you can do things beyond your realm of training, for the most part, you should be fine. So if you are really feeling like, well, this person really should work with a therapist, then they can work, with a therapist. And there might be some capacities that you have that someone else doesn't have. So say like there's this, there's a bunch of people, some people maybe even here, you guys have NLP, backgrounds. There's NARM, I think it's called like neuroassociative, it's some sort of like also a different kind, right? So you just have to be very clear, who are you helping with? Who are you helping? What are you helping them with? Are you very clear with your language that you are not setting yourself to be a therapist if you're not one? And as long as you're very clear with who you are and who you help and what you help them with, for the most part, you guys should be pretty in the clear, as long as you're, again, not saying that you're a doctor when you're not really a doctor.
Exactly.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Can we all send Andrea, big hand of applause for her time with us here? This is incredible. And that resource again was?
Contractmusthaves.com.
Contractmusthaves.com. I really encourage you guys to go take advantage of that. And if they wanted to find you online, what are the best ways for them to find you?
Yeah, so Instagram at Andrea Sager Law, and on TikTok at The Legalpreneur.
Perfect. And you have a podcast as well that they can listen to.
Legalpreneur. So just look up The Legalpreneur and you'll find me.
Perfect. People are saying thank you. Thank you so much. This was really helpful. Super. Thank you so much. So Andrea, thank you for being here with us. All right, guys, we have, I'm pretty sure next, this upcoming week, we also have, we have Phil, and we are going to be talking about, your finances as an entrepreneur. So I'm really excited about that. And we will see you then. Again, thank you for joining us. Bye, everybody.